This is an in the studio production, and today what we're showing you is how to create a vulcanized rubber mould which will produce a wax copy which we can then use in lost wax casting. So these are the things we're going to need. We need a mould frame, we need the ring that we want to copy, which is there, little calla lily ring, and we need a little copper sprue. So taking our mould frame, we lay it on top of the mould making compound and using a scalpel just cut through so that we get the right size piece. We need the mould compound to fill the frame completely and leave no gaps. So of course the easiest way to do that is just to cut through. Now I've speeded this bit up because I'm sure that you'll get the drift without watching it at normal rate. Now we're going to need probably 3 or 4 layers. You can see yourself that each layer is quite thin, so we'll try 3 and then we'll hold them up at the side of the framework. Not quite enough, so we'll cut another one. So I'll cut that through, obviously making sure those corners are off because they're ever so slightly rounded, and then start and push them into the frame. Push all the way down, making sure that there's no lumps or bumps or any spare bits, and then make sure that our ring is going to fit, which it is. But because we want the ring and the sprue to be central, we need to put another layer in first. So we take the paper off because the whole thing is going to be melted together. So if you were to leave the paper on, it wouldn't work. So we push that in. There we go. Pushing that as hard down as we can. Then we need to take our ring and our sprue and just solder them lightly together. And then we can press that into our mould making compound as one piece. Obviously the sprue and the ring have to touch for the wax to flow through that tube, if you like, that the sprue will make. And then gradually we're putting the rest of the mould compound over the top. Once we've got a nice coverage, using little spare bits that are around, we can start and fill any gaps that have been created. So just making sure there's no paper on there. We can start and push those into holes. Taking care not to distort the ring that you've actually put in, we press all the way around using fingers, tools, whatever's handy, just to make sure that the compound is not leaving any gaps. Now we're going to cut another strip off and just cover it over that centre piece where we have a gap. Make sure the paper's gone. Lovely. Pop that over the top. Once that's there, we're going to put another sheet over the top of that because we want it to be proud, so when it goes into the press it's got something to compress. There we go, so that one on the top, and then pressing down with fingers all the way around. Lovely. Then what we do is we take our mould frame complete with its ring and its mould compound, and we see the 2 metal discs that we've got there. We've just sprinkled them with talcum powder. That ensures that the compound doesn't stick to the metal plates. And then 1 top and 1 bottom, like a sandwich. We're going to put the whole thing into the vulcanizing press. Now the press itself is heated. So what we do is we put it on, wind the top down, and then leave it for a certain amount of time. So I think we've probably got time for coffee. So about an hour later, after we've left it, we come back and release the top jaw of the press. Now using big thick gloves, because of course this is hot now, we take the 2 plates and our mould frame out, and we're going to immerse the whole thing in a sink full of cold water. There we go. Now once that cools down, we can then release our little blue block out of our mould frame. The first thing to do is we draw a picture on. When you have lots and lots of these, you need to know which each one is, and the easiest way is to draw on the outside. So we've cut all the way around the edge as if it was a cake that we were slicing through, and then with the little cuts around the edge we could start now working our way inside. Those initial cuts weren't particularly deep, just sufficient to actually get in. Now using a bent fork, which I have been reliably informed is far better than any manufactured tool, the fork holds that rubber and pulls. whilst you go in with the scalpel and start making cuts. The cuts that you need to make on the inside are not smooth. They need to be made in a very irregular zigzag type pattern. This is so that when you've removed your ring and you've removed your sprue and you locate everything back together, it goes into exactly the right position. As you can imagine, if one side was ever so slightly off, you wouldn't have a perfect ring at all. So, attacking this with our scalpel, I'm just speeding this up now because it is a time-consuming job and also one that you really need to know what you're doing. I wouldn't like to try and attack this rubber with a scalpel. I'm quite sure that I would end up without thumbs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the camera around a bit because we're getting to the point now we can actually, there we go, that's better. Can you just see the ring there? You can just see the flash of silver. Now you have to be very careful when you're doing this. Not only because you're using a scalpel and it's sharp, but also because the cuts that you are making in the rubber to free the ring can only be single cuts. If you were to do, say, two side by side that touched, you would lose a piece of rubber. And suddenly, if you lost a piece of rubber, the only opening in the mould wouldn't just be your ring, it would be the piece of rubber that you'd lost. However, we're very fortunate. Teresa is very experienced, knows exactly what she's doing, and all her cuts are individual, gradually freeing our silver ring. Nearly there now. There we go, just a couple more cuts and we'll have the ring out. Yep, that's it. So we've got our ring back and we have the sprue back. So what we need to do now is actually take our mould. Because we're going to use hot wax, we've put a metal plate top and bottom, and holding that we've pressed that against a pressurised container of molten wax. The wax flows in through where the sprue was, because it makes like a tube, and it flows into the opening that was left by our ring. So once we've got that filled with wax, we need to pop it on one side and leave it to stand for a few minutes until it sets and goes cold, which it has done now. So we free each corner off, and then once they're free we can start by hand and just carefully, very carefully. If you can imagine, if you were to get a hold of the two halves and just pull them apart, this is only a little delicate wax copy of a ring in there. The chances are you damage it, so we have to be very gentle. So opening the mould up, just hold it properly and then we can, that's it, gradually just release our little wax ring. That of course will go on to be used in the casting process to make copies of that ring. So there's our little wax calla lily ring, which is a copy of our original silver ring, and once cast will be another silver ring. The original ring was designed and fabricated by Teresa Spear, as was the mould. I'm Rachel Murgatroyd, and I'm happy to tell you about all these things that happen in the studio. Why not check out the website? We have many, many classes. Thank you for watching.